Hello everyone, my name is Michelle Carr and I'm part of Group 2 as we present over how the K-12 educations are being affected by the COVID environment. I will be discussing the problems and problems diagnosis. To start off, our group has pinpointed 3 major problems that we thought that COVID is affecting dramatically for the education system and school districts. To begin, we started off by discussing the idea that students don't have access to technology, whether that's a computer or internet to access materials that they need to learn. Another one was the added cost that comes with COVID and all the guidelines that need to be followed. So things such as PPE and the big expense of plexiglass, and also that the idea is time is money, and that a lot of time is being spent on COVID guidelines that could be spent on either teaching or learning. And the last is how there are many hindrances that are affecting learning that COVID is bringing on, and this just kind of surrounds the idea that students that are in grades K through 3rd grade are having a rocky foundation of education due to COVID and all of the hindrances that it's bringing on, such as, just for one example, the idea that masks are being covered on teachers' faces, and even students are having to wear them as well, and this hinders them in the way that they can't learn expression. So just being able to start off with a good foundation in that basic knowledge of education to help them in lifelong learning is shaken by some of the COVID effects. To begin our problem diagnosis, we can start by discussing the technological limitations that remote learning causes. Something that we first recognized was that students may not have access to computers, tablets, or printers. This causes a problem because they may not have access to their online Zoom class, to materials or resources that their teachers have told them about. So this overall can be definitely a technological limitation to learning. And even if schools were to give students a computer or tablet, we run into the issue of they might not have access to the internet at home to get online and to get on the Zoom class or access any materials to do homework. The Pew Research Center says that more than 25% of US homes lacked internet access. So this definitely runs into a limitation for students' learning and their ability to connect with the materials that their teachers have given. Another thing that we noticed was that online learning is difficult due to the lack of interaction with teachers. This brings on the challenges of distance learning and causes students to struggle with understanding their assignments when they can't maybe physically speak to their teachers, or really physically interactive, asking them maybe after class or anything of that sort. And this can be also hard on the teachers, not being able to speak with their students specifically about what they expect from them. The last thing that we pinpointed with the technological limitations was that if students do have access to a computer and log on to their Zoom class or have materials that they look to online, that they may have a difficult time keeping up or having a difficult time focusing on learning these materials, staring at a computer screen. And ultimately, this can cause poor grades because they really aren't efficiently learning, but they may be distracted and not have the attention that they need to learn the materials that were given to them. Another problem that we found was the added cost that COVID has brought onto educational systems and school districts. One of the first things that we noticed was PPE and how they're spending a good chunk of their money on things such as sanitizer, gloves, masks. All these things are adding more costs, distracting schools from maybe investing on other learning materials that can help students. One other thing that we pinpointed was the plexiglass usage. And not only businesses are using these, but schools are now using these to where they're putting sheets between desk, and this can be a big cost. Looking into how much plexiglass costs, I can imagine how much it adds up to buy each sheet of this material. Another added cost that we found is that time is money, and too much time is being spent on COVID guidelines and taking away from teachers teaching and students learning. So these guidelines can cause a lot of distractions and interruptions in the classroom and online. It can make students and teachers not really focus on the materials that they're teaching if they're constantly focused on staying social distance, keeping their mask on. So this also can be a problem that COVID has brought on. To dig a little deeper, our third problem is the teaching and learning obstacles that COVID has brought on through our schools and the educational system currently. These include specifically in-person classes. As we discussed in our group, that there are a lot of limits to learning that have been caused due to COVID. And one of those things is specifically for grades K through 3rd. This is where they're starting to learn. This is where they're starting to grow. And because of COVID, things such as wearing a mask kind of hinders students to learn expressions. They don't see their teacher smiling. If a teacher is teaching what expressions are and how it's supposed to look like, students maybe get confused, and this can create for a rocky foundation for them to start off with if they don't know what these small learning objectives are. So these things are definitely something that we will be discussing in the next slides, as we have attempted to find solutions for each of these problems and hope they can or will be utilized in the future for schooling systems, as it can definitely be difficult to learn under these circumstances.